I have come to generally hate activists because they tend to make life harder for the very people that they claim to be advocating for.
How'd you get up there? Wasn't easy!
Take this discourse around wheelchairs in tabletop RPGs or disability in RPGs more broadly. I'm disabled. I have crippling depression and anxiety. I have to walk with a stick about half the time, and I'm in constant pain when I am walking around. I recently found out that I have about a 10% chance of just randomly dying from a heart attack, stroke, or aneurysm over the next few years. So that's fun. Here's all the pills I have to take on the daily to A, not die, and B, not kill myself.
This is awful!
That's what I said.
See, that's part of the reason I fucking hate you. Because you've made it necessary for people like me to establish their bona fides before they speak up on any topic. Right? Which means I have to relive and express everything that's wrong with me just to have the right to speak. And non-disabled people have valid opinions here as well.
You heard me!
You don't have to be something personally to have an opinion on it, to understand it, to have empathy or compassion. And disallowing the non-disabled to speak on these topics is dehumanizing as well as absurd. It denies them those human qualities of empathy, compassion. And, these are the people you have to convince, so it might be a good idea to listen to them.
Did you just think of that? Yeah, just now.
Yeah, I've tried Logos. I've tried Ethos. Let's try Pathos.
Once more with feeling.
I am sick of being patronized by well-meaning but dumb and thoughtless petty bourgeois American white liberals.
They're dull, unimaginative, and bourgeois.
You think representation matters, but your understanding of representation is limited to the most shallow and meaningless categorization. You can't seem to grok that anyone can identify with characters and representations beyond their own, to vibe with personality or struggle in a more general sense, right? To see literally me in someone who doesn't necessarily look anything like you.
Ooh, I can see myself.
You ignore that the games we make and that we play are imaginative, wherein we can be and experience to some degree what it's like being someone else, being someone with different physical, social and mental traits, to walk a mile in someone else's shoes or roll a mile in someone else's wheels if you insist. Then you have the sheer temerity to accuse people like me of a lack of imagination when we object to your virtue signalling blandishments or your sophomoric self-insert characters. It's childish to play self-inserts constantly.
Men don't get their moo-moo from a baba. They get their moo-moo from a big boy cup.
Play something else. It's immature. And why would you want to play yourself, especially if you have these limitations? Take the opportunity to enjoy playing something else. There's a Ben Elton novel where a character got his balls blown off in Vietnam. He plays D&D, and his character is a wizard who is unremarkable in most degrees, except he has enormous testicles that he carries around in a wheelbarrow.
Gore!
Demanding whole tables conform to your desires or suffer is unbridled narcissism. Worse, when you start threatening mere games masters with cancellation for telling you no to something. We're allowed to say no. I can deny a party of all ninjas in a game set in 10th century Gaul, right? So then I can deny your petition to play a disabled character in a heavily discounted magical war chariot that you call a wheelchair if it doesn't fit the setting, if it doesn't fit the system, if it doesn't fit the vibe of the game or the table that I'm seeking to create? Here's the sadly typical kind of threat that we're talking about.
If a player wants to use it, you're obligated, as a DM, to make reasonable accommodations. Failure to accommodate reasonable options of play makes you a bad DM. People will leave your table over it. Word of mouth will spread. You've now made a name for yourself as a bad DM. Fun.
Ron Edwards of The Forge used to call D&D players brain damaged, and all these years later I'm beginning to think that maybe he was right, just not necessarily in the way that he thought. Because the pro combat wheelchair lobby largely, mostly, only ever thinks in terms of D&D.
Dungeons and Dragons.
And in terms of D&D, only ever thinks about it in the context of 5th edition D&D and the boulderized Rifts Light context of the Forgotten Realms. There are other settings. There are other games, you ludologically challenged Philistines.
Gentlemen, there's more in heaven and earth than is dreamt of in our philosophy.
Even in D&D, even in the Forgotten Realms, this combat wheelchair is OP bollocks. I mean, look at this shit. It initially costs 200 gold pieces and can be upgraded with up to 3 upgrades, each one costing as little as 15 gold pieces or as much as 550. Your speed becomes 30. You can control the chair telepathically. The chair benefits from any spells cast on you. The chair retains its benefits when you wild shape or polymorph, including the upgrades. The chair has no hit points and must be hit by 3 critical hit melee attacks in the same encounter, whatever that means, before needing repairs. But the chair being broken does nothing to stop it from functioning. The chair also benefits from attuned magic items. The chair also counts as a mount for the purposes of mounted combat. The chair gives you advantage against being knocked prone. You get extra movement speed going downhill. You can use it to attack, dealing 1d8 damage using strength or dex. And that's without even getting into all the options, which are also ludicrous. It wouldn't be so bad, so fucking stupid, if you at least wanted to play disabled characters where the disability meant something, had some kind of impact on the game, where stares were a genuine challenge, where you suffered penalties and compensated in other areas. The way it works, or at least worked, in something like GURPS or Storyteller or Champions, where you could take quadriplegic for a whole bunch of bonus points and then buy replacement limbs extremely cheaply. But I digress into cheese.
Cheese?
But no, you want to reduce disability to meaninglessness. A purely aesthetic choice. Again, patronizing, infantilizing. We fight to overcome our limitations from being disabled. But that means there have to be limitations to overcome. Penalties, difficulties, things that make being disabled meaningful and impactful. This is not unlike the removal of genuine historical racism or sexism from many settings. Hugely disrespectful to the people that struggled through those times and managed to change and improve things and get genuine progress. Pretending the past didn't exist in the way that it existed is denying the progress we've made and the sacrifices to overcome it. It's disrespectful to the people who made those sacrifices. That disgusts me as a historian. This disgusts me as a fucking cripple. And here's the thing.
Clear! Clear.
I'm not alone. Yet you champions of the disabled seem to have extremely fucking selective hearing. Do what you want at your table and let us do what we want at our table. Stop crowbarring this and all your other stupid nonsense into conventions, clubs, shops and the products themselves with demands that aren't actually representing us Crips. Shit, you ask most disabled people, and if the option was there to magic away their disabilities, the overwhelming majority would take it. Hell, if I ended up in an isekai, the first thing I would do, after banging a harem of hot elf chicks, would be to get a white mage to sort me out. I'm hardly alone on either score.
Genie?
So, a little more thought, a little more imagination, a little less threats. And no Zang, you don't deserve it.
A problem for every games master has always been coming up with adventure ideas. For years now, Postmortem Studios has been helping out with the 100 Adventure Seeds line. These provide adventure ideas for all genres, and you can get them at RPG Now or lulu.com.